JY, stay fly.
Hey, girl.
2 Y's on the fly.
What's up?
The notes.
This song is a special request from the West End Zone, Chris.
Oh, yeah?
You familiar with JY Stay Fly?
No, I don't know if I know this song.
Good for you. This is terrible stuff.
This is a Miami Hurricane special?
No. Actually, this guy, as a matter of fact, now long story to it, too long to tell. But he's actually like from the University of Georgia, as a Caucasian rapper who's not so fly. It's not fly enough to have 2 Y's at the end of the name. There's no question about that. We're going to talk a little Miami Hurricane football with Danny Money, who's kind enough to join us. He's with CanesInsight.com. He's the owner, contributor, podcast host. He does everything over there. Danny, good morning. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Adam. How you doing?
I'm doing quite well. You got to send me more. You got to send me a different song than that if you want your bump music to be anything better than JY Stay Fly. That's all I got for you.
I got another song called Guat Drop, which is equally terrible if you want to switch it up.
Okay, well, I'm making notes as we speak. Hey, Danny, let me ask you about Paul Dee, who passed away here this week. The thoughts on Paul Dee as an athletic director at the University of Miami. Did fans love him? Did fans not like him? Did fans maybe misunderstand him? What was the sort of the gauge of the temperature of the fan base at the University of Miami when it came to Paul Dee?
Well, he had a real strange legacy because he was here literally through the best of times and the worst of times. He got here in 1993, where Miami was on top of the college football world, was really getting kind of fat off the land. I mean, they'd been dominant for a whole decade. There was some internal problems with the program, which would ultimately lead to sanctions, and a lot of high-profile recruits that didn't pan out. So he inherited a program that was high in prestige, but that was really crumbling on the inside. Then, of course, you had the sanctions in the mid-'90s, and the program hit rock bottom while the Gators went to the top. And then he hired Butch Davis, and he saw the rise in the early 2000s. And then, of course, you saw the Coker decline. Same thing. They got fat off the land, and there was some internal problems, which are currently leading to our sanctions now with Nevin Shapiro. Most of the worst of that took place in that time period right after the first championship. So you saw the fall, the rise, and the fall again. So it's a very interesting legacy for Paul Dee.
Before we get into the specifics of Hurricane Spring and what the season's looking like for 2012, I wanted to ask you kind of about the thoughts in terms of the Miami Hurricane perspective about what's going on in Tallahassee, some of the Big 12 rumors that have involved Miami potentially making the move there with Florida State if it does in fact happen, or if it happens where Florida State leaves, potentially losing that game against the Seminoles, what that would do, not being able to play the Gators or the Seminoles in a season home-and-home battle would just potentially cripple kind of what the Hurricanes have been able to create here with their presence in the state of Florida. What's the overall thought in Coral Gables about the ACC move to the Big 12 for a couple of those teams?
Well, Miami, was originally an independent that was in the Big East and recently been in the ACC, so there's no strong conference ties. I think the thing that really scares Canes fans is losing that FSU series. That's the real big concern. Now, Miami's always been a team that plays big-name out-of-conference teams, even to the present day, your Oklahomas, your Ohio States. So I think that would continue and probably ramp up a bit. But the FSU series is the real concern. Miami's still a high-profile team. I think 4 of the 5 highest-rated ESPN games for college football are actually Miami games, including the game against Florida, which I believe is the number 1 rated game. So there's still a draw nationally, and I think they'll still be able to get these out-of-conference games.
Yeah, not having Florida State on the schedule, though, I'm sorry. Just that would not feel right to me. I'm only 34, so maybe there was a time that they didn't play before I was alive. But, man, I can't even imagine a time where Miami wouldn't be playing against a Florida State and or a Florida in any given season. Danny Money of CanesInsight.com, our guest here on the Sports Fix, talking Miami Hurricane sports. Let me ask you about Randy Shannon apparently suing the university. Now, is this a case of sour grapes, or does the university owe this dude some cash?
Well, it's hard to say. I'm actually a lawyer by trade, or pretend to be, and I read through the pleadings. The contract is not attached to the pleading because of confidentiality reasons, so it's hard to say who's right and who's wrong without looking at the actual contract. Now, what Randy's alleging is that he's owed a guaranteed bonus for every year that he was the coach under the contract, which is only 1 year under the extension. Now, he was fired in November. So basically, he only coach for about 5/6 of the year, but he had already been paid that full first-year guarantee. Now, what he's saying is that UM took that 1/6 that he did not coach and had already been paid through the bonus and has been taking that money out of the yearly severance that he's owed. So basically, the UM is kind of rearranging the contract to what they think is fair. Now, without actually seeing the contract, it's hard to say who's right or who's wrong, but it'll probably settle, and we won't hear about it again.
Taking a look at the Miami Hurricanes schedule next year, you got to believe that they need to get off to a fast start to help build some confidence in a program that has kind of been back and forth over the last couple of years. But pretty daunting task for them as they head on the road 3 times during the month of September. What's been the mood in terms of the outlook about the schedule and kind of that challenge that they face in the first month of the season?
Well, I think expectations are pretty low as far as wins and losses next year. I mean, it's going to be a young team, and like you said, they're going to be on the road early and relying on a lot of young players on the road their freshman year. I mean, that's a recipe for disaster. That Kansas State game, to me, is the key game. If they can win that game, which should be, it's a winnable game. I mean, Miami really should have won the game last year. If they can win that game, they can get some positive momentum heading into the big Notre Dame game, which will be probably the marquee game for the season. But a lot's going to rest on Stephen Morris. He has experience. He's played on the road. He's won on the road. And he's going to have to be the guy that really steps up his game in the early part of the season.
Now, you mentioned Stephen Morris. Now, he looks like he's 100% healthy and ready to get after the starting quarterback position there. Ryan Williams was pretty much the guy throughout the entire spring. Now, Stephen Morris back healthy. How big an impact can he have for this football team as the starting quarterback?
Well, the team's going to rise and fall with Steve Morris. He really is a talented player. We know he's got the arm. We know he's got the wheels. He's tough. He's shown he'll stand in there, take hits. He'll run. He'll put his shoulder down. He's a tough player. Now it's just going to be how much of the offense has he absorbed? How much command does he have of the offense? In the Maryland game last year, first game of the year on the road, a lot of adversity with the sanctions looming, or with the the story out, the Yahoo story out, and everybody talking about the Canes. He performed well, but he showed he wasn't mentally there as the starter. There were some communication issues. The plays took a little too long to get out. Clock management towards the end of the game was an issue. So he's going to have to show that he's progressed since then. He's matured and he's learned.
You know, you look at the Miami Hurricane history over the last couple of decades. Obviously, a number of great offensive players, but to me, it's always been about defense for the Hurricanes. And last year, while they limited teams to 20 points a game, it seemed like they had the propensity to give up some big plays at the wrong time. What's the situation with the defense heading into this season, and can they kind of get a little bit of that Miami Hurricane swagger back on that side of the ball that we're used to seeing?
Chris, I think you nailed it. I mean, the defense was really the weak point of the team last year. You mentioned the scoring defense, 20 points a game, but they played very much a bend, don't break defense. They kept teams out of the end zone, but they didn't get the ball back. They were near the bottom of the NCAA in turnovers. The time of possession really favored the opposition. We didn't have the ball enough. It was a big play offense, a lot of yards per play, a lot of big plays, but they just did not have the ball. So Miami needs to get back to the type of defense that not only can get the ball back with 3 and out, but they can make big plays, turnovers, and put their offense in a favorable position to score. And I don't know if next year's the year. There's going to be a lot of young players, but hopefully those young puppies bark, to use a Bill Parcells term, and we see some potential down the road for playmakers on that side of the ball.
Danny Money, CanesInsight.com with us here on the Sports Fix. And you mentioned some of the young players. Talk about the young guys that are coming in for Summer A, guys like Duke Johnson, Tracy Howard, Deion Bush. Those guys may be guys that this coaching staff leans on early for some of those big plays, both on offense and defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Most of the guys coming in for Summer A are the guys that were initially pegged as the early contributors. I don't know if that's by design or what, that they're here early, but certainly Tracy Howard, there's a huge void at cornerback. There has been for a few years. He can step in there. Duke Johnson is being counted out to bring some big plays to the offense. The running back core as currently constituted is more of a workman-like group, tough players but not big play players. Duke Johnson could add that element. And also a guy I want to keep an eye on coming out of Tampa Plant named Antonio Crawford will be here in Summer A. He's also a cornerback. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is right there with Tracy Howard going into August practice, because he's a little under the radar right now, but a very talented player.
This week, the announcement for the recent College Hall of Fame inductees was released. Jimmy Johnson on that list. Kind of surprised that Jimmy Johnson has not been elected to the Hall of Fame earlier, given all that he did at the University of Miami. But you look at, there's a number of obviously great coaches from a stretch of 30 years there in Hurricanes lore. Where does Jimmy Johnson stack up in terms of most Hurricanes list of favorite coaches?
I think he's at the top. I mean, he's the guy that really set the blueprint, not only for Miami, but really for modern defensive football. I mean, if you look at his Cane defenses, the speed that they played with, the fact that he would take safeties, put weight on a move to linebacker, take linebackers, put weight on a move to defensive end, that sort of set the blueprint. Instead of these big, lumbering, blue-collar, Penn State type defenses, you started going towards the fast defenses that you saw at Florida, that you saw at Florida State, recently at USC. So he was certainly the most influential Canes coach. He's the most visible today. He still speaks to the team. Al Golden brings him in front of the team regularly. And just his persona, his swagger, I think that's what Canes fans most identify with. And I think there's no question that for all Schnellenberger did for the program and Erickson's 2 championships, Jimmy Johnson is the guy that's held up as the gold standard for Canes coaches.
Danny Money of CanesInsight.com, the best place to go for the latest in Miami Hurricane information. And you guys have added a new little wrinkle there to the website. You guys got a little podcast going. You guys are 4 episodes deep now.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it looks. I mean, the stuff that you guys do, it takes work, but we're working at it. We're having fun with it. This is kind of the dead period for Canes talk right now. It's May. We're kind of in between spring football and then the summer Al Golden camp. So, we're throwing stuff to the wall and hoping it sticks. So, but
Chris, you should listen to this stuff because this is what you and I really, really, really want to do. I mean, like, we're pretty loose. That's ultra loose, my man. They can do whatever they want to on this show. It's great.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I like loose, man. Loose is good with sports talk, man.
There's no question. Danny, man, really appreciate your time, man. We'll talk to you next week at this time, man. Tell everybody we said hello. Give a shout-out to the West End Zone. All that good stuff, my man. Really appreciate you.
Hey, my pleasure. Good luck with the morning, guys.
I appreciate it. Danny Money of CanesInsight.com. Coming up next, Matt Bonner. He's got a middle schooler in trouble. We'll tell you why. Coming up next, you're listening to The Sports Fix on ESPN Radio.